Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Specialty Coffee and Haute Cuisine panel discussion at the Ljubljana Coffee Festival. My name is Vasilia Fanariotti, and I'm a journalist for Barista Magazine. I'm really excited to be here today. Today's topic is not a new concept in both the coffee and the culinary world, but it's definitely not one that's given the spotlight at coffee festivals. At least definitely not the ones I've been to. So I'm really keen to pick the brains of the esteemed experts we have here today with us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to them. So we have the owner of Team Wendelbo Coffee Roasters and 2004 World Barista Champion, Team Wendelbo! Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We have coffee consultant, author, YouTuber, and 2007 World Barista Champion, James Hoffman. Welcome. We have the 2017 World Barista Champion and coffee consultant, Dale Harris. Welcome. And now we are presenting the Slovenian team. We have the head chef of JB Restaurant, Tomas Pratops. Welcome. We would also like to welcome the executive chef of Strelic Restaurant, Igor Jagodic. And finally, the head chef of Pen Club Restaurant and author of 44 Shades of Tea, Moimir Shiftar. Thank you everyone for being here. To those of you who have experienced fine dining, you might remember that coffee is usually served at the end. Almost like an afterthought. Usually wine takes the center stage at such restaurants throughout the meal. So I'm really interested to hear what our guests here have to say about the topic, and especially because yesterday evening I had the privilege, actually, of attending a pairing of specialty coffee and haute cuisine at Strelic, which was curated by Igor and Stowe Coffee Roasters, and it was really beautifully done. So it actually made me wonder, why don't we see more of this, and is it feasible to see more of this? So I'd like to start with my first question, and there'll be some time at the end to ask questions if you guys want. So my first question is for Tim. Spotlight. So, Tim, coffee and wine, as you know, share many similarities when it comes to terroir, tasting notes, and even rituals around consumption. Yet wine is celebrated as an integral part of the fine dining experience, while coffee is often left until the end. So I'd like to ask you, what you think are the biggest barriers to changing this mindset, and if it makes actual sense to change this mindset, and how do we move beyond coffee as just an afterthought in dining? There's a lot of questions hiding in there.
Yeah, that was a lot. Well, I have a lot of experience working with restaurants in both Norway, and also I've worked with Noma in Denmark for 10 years. And I would say, in Norway today, it's more common to get good coffee after a meal than to get a bad coffee after a meal in the good restaurants. I think one of the things that made us successful as a roaster to be able to work with restaurants was that in the beginning, we made it too complicated, I think. We all wanted restaurants to brew coffee at tableside, pay a lot of attention to coffee, yet it's just one drink at the end of the meal. So I think we had an unrealistic expectation of what coffee should be in a restaurant, and a lot of the restaurateurs were a little off-put by that, I think. So when we changed strategy, trying to help the restaurants just serve a nice coffee at the end, making it very easy for them to serve it, making it easy for them to prepare it, simplify it as much as we could. That's when we started getting customers in restaurant world who really wanted to do it. And it's kind of like a domino effect. When you start with one, another one comes along, because it's a small business, everyone knows each other, and if one restaurant sees that this one has a great coffee at the end of the meal, they also want to do it, especially when they hear that it's easy to do, because it is quite easy to do. In Norway, we were fortunate to have a filter coffee culture, so one of the first things we did was to remove the espresso machine from the restaurant. It made the logistics much easier for them, and also the average Norwegian expects just a black coffee after the meal, and making a nice, tasty filter coffee at the end of the meal works really well. I personally don't like to pair coffee with food. I think it doesn't really match with a lot of foods, maybe some desserts. And I eat a lot out because I don't have kids. And I prefer like... so when you eat a lot of food, you need acidity and something to kind of balance fats and other stuff. And coffee doesn't do that in a great way, I think. So I prefer to like keep it very separate. Even like I don't like to pair it with liquor or anything. Like it's a thing that is at the end of the meal and off you go. And I think a lot of the restaurants we work with at least treats it like that now. Like maybe they will serve some petit fours with the coffee, but that's it. And they spend as much time presenting the coffee as they would with the wine. You know, like. They're not talking about the whole history of the vineyard unless it's something extremely special, but they might mention the grape or the coffee variety and who roasted it and kind of what to expect, because a lot of people still expect coffee to taste bitter and strong, and our coffees don't do that. So yeah.
I'm wondering, based on what you're saying, is it important to give the option to the customer to maybe suggest this over that? Are they very serious about their coffee at the end of the meal? I know some take sugar. You can suggest to them, you can try this. Was that an important part of the restaurants that you worked with, to give the customer the option?
I think, like I said, the key to our success with like most of our wholesale clients today are actually restaurants. I think the key to success there is to train them so that they can make their own choices of what type of coffee they want to serve at the end, and they have made a conscious choice of what they want to serve, and simplify it for the customer as well, because at the end of the meal normally they are just asked, would you like a cup of coffee or not, like not if you want a milk or sugar, or you know, and if they want that, of course they can have that, but most of the times, at least in Norway, most people prefer coffee without sugar and milk.
Please, go ahead.
Can I jump in?
Please do.
Please.
Yeah, I think I think if we're talking about coffee and fine dining, I think there's a lost opportunity in fine dining. I think a lot about the idea of control. When you arrive as a guest in a restaurant, you are in control still. You choose what you might want to drink, and then at some point you hand your control to the restaurant, and they're going to feed you, and you're going to eat things that you maybe wouldn't choose, ingredients you maybe wouldn't select. But there's trust. And because of the trust, you go on a journey. And then what we do is we hand control back to the guest for coffee. And this is where I think historically a lot of friction has come in, because we've said, you're in charge again now. And they're like, okay, great, can I get a cappuccino? And you're like, no, right? And that doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? They're like, what do you want? Anything you like, but not that, right? That doesn't work. It seems to me, if we want to be playful with coffee in a meal, in a fine dining environment, then it just has to stay within the control of the restaurant. And so the question of at the start, does everyone drink coffee? Yes, no, like an allergen. You all drink coffee? Great. You're going to get a coffee course, but we're in charge of that. And I think the kind of open-mindedness that comes with, I'm still on the journey, you're still in charge, I'm just eating and drinking and having a good time, is a missed opportunity, I think, in fine dining particularly. It doesn't work for all restaurants, but where there is such a switch between control, I think that's the opportunity for me to do the fun stuff that coffee can do without it being a pairing or without it being something that you hope is close to what they want at the end when they're back in charge. There's that other little space in the middle, I think.
There's always the idea that when a person visits a fine dining restaurant, they are usually open to a new experience. So I like what you're saying, because my question for you, this is great actually, I like that you jumped in, because my question for you is how can coffee experts work with chefs to incorporate these nuances into their dishes? What opportunities would you imagine exist for collaboration in a more like a practical manner?
I think it's going to come down to what the chef wants to achieve for the guest. Ultimately, is this a menu that's trying to tell a story? Is this a story about ingredient? Is it about season? Is it about history? Is it about place? Like what are you? Are you or is it none of the above? Are you just trying to be really delicious? And just it's a free for all, and that's that thing. So that's the kind of the first piece of that. I think coffee can do all of those things. I think coffee people get very excited by coffee's diversity of flavor. And its real differences, and I think that is an opportunity in itself. But because I think coffee it doesn't play well with a lot of other ingredients. It makes me want to pull back a little bit and actually just keep it very kind of ingredient focused more than anything else, and not too convoluted. I think there's still opportunity for surprise and delight and storytelling, but it's going to start with what are you trying to say with the meal? What do you want me to remember from this? What is the little moment of like, did you remember the coffee that we got? What was that, right? Like the fat duck in England will approach that very differently to like a 3 Michelin star would in Paris. Like that's going to be two different goals right at the start. So I don't think you can just prescribe something necessarily, but coffee has a lot of vocabulary to work with. And so I think it's asking the question first of what do you want to say? Well, here's a great way to say that. And you can, sure, we can help you brew it better or think about extractions and the technical side, but like why is the first question, I guess.
Thank you. I think Moimir has a comment on that.
I mean, there's just I need to go closer. Yeah. So I think the two most important things, it should be like first of all trust between I'm regarding to the question between the chef and the roaster, and the second thing should be like the chef needs to know a lot about the coffee world as the roaster needs to know about the cuisine world. So it's all a storytelling, it's the philosophy of a chef, and I think it's the most important thing to trust your roaster, then that he understands your philosophy and he finds the best coffee to tell your story, I think.
Yeah.
Have you had such an experience, Moimir, personally?
Not yet, but we're building with Peter now. We're building a story.
Oh, news.
We're gonna get to that later.
Okay, that's exciting. You first heard it here, guys, by the way. My next question is actually for Igor. So as a Michelin star chef with a lot of experience, I want to ask you about logistics, like what challenges you foresee in sourcing seasonal specialty coffee while maintaining consistency in your menu offerings, especially with growing emphasis on seasonality.
Yes, because till now we thought really not too much a lot about the food, and we didn't thought really a lot about the coffee. And the coffee was always the last thing about what we thought. First was the food, the second was the wine pairing, then non-alcoholic pairing, and then the last thing was the coffee. And now we think a lot about the coffee, and Peter is here about maybe again to help us with this, what we need, what we want. We want a good coffee, and we want some seasonal coffee, and that's here comes some guys, some roaster who can really help us, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Do any of our coffee experts have a reply to this as well? Like how you could help a chef with sourcing seasonal coffee? What would be the logistic challenges that maybe a restaurant would have in comparison to a coffee shop? I don't know if any of you have had experience with this.
Yeah, so a lot of my restaurant clients actually want to change coffee. Some maybe twice a year, some others just once a year. But we buy coffee that are kind of small quantities, so they run out. So they are kind of forced to change the coffee when we run out. I think Noma is a good example because they have at least the format they have been for the last some years. They have had like 3 very defined seasons, so a vegetable season, a game season with meats, and then a seafood season. So we've actively tried to find coffees that suit the menu. The challenge actually for us as a small roaster is that we run out of coffee. So, if they have a season that, like the vegetable seasons normally start in early June, and they would much rather prefer having Ethiopian or Kenyan coffee that is fruity that really suits that menu. The challenge can sometimes be logistics in coffee, that you don't really have fresh coffee from those countries at that time because, you know, like this year there was problems in the Red Sea and stuff. So you kind of have to plan ahead quite a lot. And there's ways to kind of preserve coffee. You can freeze the green beans and so on. But you really have to think about it ahead. And I'm not saying that, I mean, Noma is extreme. There's other restaurants who will easily just come to our roastery. We have cuppings for our restaurant customers every Monday that they can come anytime, and they will just select from whatever we have, or if we don't have something that they like, we will ask them, you know, what are you looking for? And then because at least in Norway, a lot of the chefs are coffee geeks, so they go to the coffee shops all the time and drink different coffees, and you know, they're looking for floral coffees or more like chocolatey coffees. So you know, it's fairly simple to work with, I think, and just don't make it very complicated. It's simple. Coffee is very simple. You know, we have good ingredients, good roast. It's easy to brew, and then off you go. In at least you don't need all the fancy equipment stuff. You know, it's water and coffee basically.
Thank you. My next question is for Tomáš. I read that your restaurant's philosophy revolves around the 4 elements: earth, water, wind, and fire, and the taste: sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. So I was wondering, how would you envision coffee fitting into this framework, and how would you combine it with that philosophy, if you have ever given it a thought?
Well, I think everything that's alive contains that stuff, and coffee is also contains the stuff. I'm not an expert on coffee, I wouldn't say that. But Peter, when he came to me just to ask if I would come here, and then he started talking for an hour and a half, and my eyes were fucking blown out, you know. And then he gave me cascara, and I made sorbet out of it, and it was, you know, it has acidity, and it's fantastic. And yeah, now I tried all the coffees here. I'm shaking a little bit, I'm sorry, but my heart was racing before. But yeah, coffee world is amazing. And when you try some Colombian, some Ethiopian, and it's totally different, you know, and some has like bitterness and acidity, some has fruitiness, and it's amazing what you can do with coffee. And I will definitely come into your world to get better at it and learn about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My next question is for Dale.
Ready?
I'm wondering if you think we'll see a greater collaboration between baristas and chefs, or possibly even dedicated roles within fine dining restaurants that focus on coffee in the same way that we have sommeliers? Or do you think more that like a sommelier will maybe take on that role?
What a question. I'd love that to be the case. I think it's restaurants are all different sizes with all different economic situations. So they might have, 100 floor staff and many covers and turning tables rapidly and selling a lot of coffee or serving a lot of coffee, or they might serve 8 cups. And the economics of paying for somebody who's an expert in coffee who spends most of their day not doing anything. Historically, my experience has been working with many restaurants is it is somebody in the beverage program. It might be a sommelier, it might not be. Often with the cost of coffee tied to the profit-making beverage program, making a lot of decisions there. And it has sometimes worked really well with a sommelier who has connected the dots between what they know about wine and spirits with how coffee is produced, with agricultural stories, with ideas of single farms, single producers making changes. And sometimes it's been an obstacle because they're not coffee lovers. And if you don't love something, it's really hard to build a program that shares that love and will inspire customers. I think if you're not producing a lot of coffee, there are lots of other challenges. So if you're only making a few cups a night, between 8 and 50 cups a night, it's really difficult to serve high quality with all of that onus being put on, let's say, non-focused individuals. And that's where I think technology can play a part, be it bulk brew machines or automatic machines that are designed for producing quality. But if you have a larger program and you have the room for staff that can spend more time making coffee, there's this huge opportunity to give them another arrow in their quiver, a new kind of space to grow and learn new things and be inspired and share that inspiration with the rest of the team. So whether it will be a full-time role, I find that hard to believe in, particularly in fine dining. There will be rare examples where that's possible, but I do think there's probably a person in every restaurant team whose fire can be lit by the possibilities that someone like Peter or a great roaster or a great barista, that they can inspire them and educate them and help them bring that creativity there. I also think chef was chief, right? They're the boss. He or she is in charge of the program. The most impactful person for a roaster or a barista to convince would be the chef. Because if the chef wants to work with this amazing diverse ingredient, they will drive the program forward. And I think one of the barriers to that is we in a specialty coffee world often see very binary answers of what quality is. So we know what works in cafes. Often that's our background. So we write a prescription for a coffee program that is based on what you would make for a morning service or a menu in a profitable cafe. And that's often not what a restaurant needs. I think there is a better opportunity, or there's an interesting opportunity, and instead we have amazing ingredient. If we come to those restaurants as an ingredient provider with maybe no recommendations on how to use it, but we have phenomenal geisha from Honduras. I don't know. We have this really interesting coffee that tastes of anything else. How could you use it? Because I've been, maybe with a dessert, but I'd be really excited to see coffees with a meat dish or in a vegetable dish and being used in different ways, because I care. We all care about different things, but the story that I want shared with more people is that coffee is diverse and has interesting flavors. And I don't care how that story is expressed. And I think there's probably, I think it can be an exceptional moment for you to have a beautifully made filter coffee at the end of a meal when you're in this situation where you're receiving so much inspiration and ideas about food, and you as a customer can have your mind switched on to, wow, coffee can be different. But also if I'm having a course and I have a sauce and it tastes of lavender and I'm told that comes from coffee, that's amazing. I want to know more. I want to understand why and where, and I think that's a great opportunity to really embrace the creativity of the chefs with the product that we have access to.
Thank you very much. I think Moimir has a comment.
So, while I was listening to you, I got an idea and just a recommendation to you guys from the Specialty Coffee. Go to us, the chefs, and just give them a blind taste and don't tell them what it is. Because I was having like a filter coffee downstairs just half an hour ago, and if I would do a blind tasting, I wouldn't even tell it was coffee. And I love the flavor. And I would definitely put it on the menu, put it in a dish or something, but without the presumption it's coffee. So just an idea.
Yes, please.
I'll throw in a quick. I was listening to you before, and I think there's something you said that's really important, which is historically coffee has been a little bit lacking in self-confidence about the product itself. And coffee is great because it's actually quite simple, but at the same time, while it's easy to make a good cup of coffee, it's also, as we have all experienced in our lives, very easy to make terrible coffee. Right? And so a lot of the time when kind of coffee first appeared in restaurants, I remember going to one in New York called 11 Madison Park, and they wheeled a cart up and they did a siphon table side, like a big siphon brew. And it was beautiful and theatrical, and that's a miserably difficult way to make coffee, right? It's terrible. And I think we often want to throw complexity in at funny times. The thing is, and it's kind of what you're saying here, everyone in this room, I suspect, has had a kind of mind-bending pour-over, right? Is that fair, everyone?
Let's see hands. Let's see hands.
Like at some, yeah, right?
Yes.
Like a bit of paper,
Maybe at this festival.
some coffee. It's a very simple thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think we need to set ourselves up for success. And as much as it can be complex and it can be all these things, the worst it can be is really important to worry about. Like when we bring coffee into restaurants, historically, the worst it can be is really diabolically bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've all had miserable restaurant coffee for a variety of reasons. That is, I would say, probably worse than the worst coffee shop coffee as a level. The kind of the worst ones. The range. Coffee shops should be in the kind of okay to good to great range here. There's a wider range in restaurants historically for a bunch of reasons. I feel like if we're going to bring it in, I think first let's just get it right as a basics, which is what you were saying, right? Like, it's good ingredient, it's simple preparation, because we don't need to show off, because if we have good ingredient, that can do the showing off for us. And so I always worry about the kind of theatricality piece coming in, adding complexity and more failure, ultimately.
Thank you. I'm reminded a story based on what you said earlier, Moimir. I have a friend who is a coffee producer from Colombia, but she also works at a fine dining restaurant in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, and she's also curated a coffee program for a fine dining restaurant in Spain. And she told me she did a blind tasting for the whole team, the sommeliers, the chefs, everybody, and she brought all her coffees, and except one coffee that wasn't hers, that nobody liked. That coffee was the restaurant's coffee. And everybody was asking at the end, "What's this? We don't like this. This is your coffee," she told me. So, I'd like to ask you a question, actually. You work with teas in fine dining, and you've written the book 44 Shades of Tea, which showcases, I think, your love for exploring ingredients. So I'd like to ask, how do you see the parallels between tea and coffee in gastronomy? And could lessons be learned from tea? Could be applied to coffee used in fine dining?
Yeah, I mean, with tea, it's basically the same. If you go like agriculturally wise, they're both plants. They both contain caffeine, and it's really wonderful to implement them in culinary wise. The only problem, it's not a problem, that you don't overdo it because of the caffeine. So you need to figure out ways how to implement it without extracting the caffeine and all the bad stuff. So usually cold brew is the stuff, or maceration, marinating stuff. And it's basically the same. You got camellia, which is the tea, and it goes from black to green to white. You got coffee, it goes Arabica, Robusta. Everything has their own specifics. But then it's like millions and millions of ways to produce that. So I'm looking at coffee as the same as a tea. It's an ingredient. It's like beef, it's like chicken. If it's a perfect ingredient, just don't fuck it up. And that's it. You need to focus on it. You need to try it out. Of course, the first time you screw it up, till you get the right stuff for the right blend, or the right roasting, or the right fermentation, anything. And it's basically just like salt and pepper for me.
Thank you. The next question is open for anyone that might have an opinion on this. I'm wondering what role you think the cultural aspects of coffee, its history, rituals, and symbolism could play in making it an essential component of fine dining. If that plays a role at the chef's program, perhaps, could that be integrated also by using the cultural aspects of coffee in fine dining? Do you think it would be an important aspect, or would you say it's better to keep it simple? Does anyone have? Yeah, please.
Just what everyone else thinks, because I think this could have loads of interesting answers. 2 points would be, one, we maybe have a bit of a monocultural idea of where coffee sits, partly because of what fine dining is and where it's come from. And I know that restaurants have changed a lot over the last 20 years. There's very different service styles. But we, particularly in Europe, we think that coffee is something that people drink in the morning in a certain way. Maybe they have 1 or 2 cups. That is a very specific cultural idea that isn't true all around the world. Mm-hmm. In China, coffee has only been drunk for 10, 15 years. In Korea, at 10 p.m., every young couple will be having a date in a specialty cafe. And they'll be eating and drinking and consuming coffee in a different way. So our cultural ideas of how we drink coffee are very local, let's say, and they don't need to be that way, and they change very fast if we offer other things. And I had another really good point, which I forgot. So.
I'm gonna fill in. So yeah, I mean, it's the same as with tea culture. You know, the Japanese have their culture, the Chinese have their culture. It's the same with coffee. Like in Slovenia, let's say 15 years ago, or let's say 20, 90% of people drank Turkish-style coffee. So in a jezva, I mean, it's still the most popular thing at homes in Slovenia. And the next one is espresso. So we got some good espressos during the last 15 years, but like if you go to some southern countries, they're still not there yet. So to put something cultural into fine dining, it needs to be like your microculture. So in Slovenia, we can make a story out of Turkish coffee at the end or espresso, and that's about it, because we don't drink as much filter coffee as you do in Norway, so it's basically impossible to incorporate that like into our culture.
Perhaps it could be tied to a local ingredient that might have the flavor profile of that coffee.
Yeah, you could, and then
It's far-fetched.
It's not far-fetched, but then we're talking about pairing, not the coffee as the culture status.
I'd like to talk a bit more about logistics and finance, and I'd like the perspective of the chefs about this, because Tim has already touched upon it a little bit. I think James as well. What is your perspective when you're sourcing coffee for the restaurant? Is it up to you guys, and how do you go about choosing it, and what do you look at to choose it? What would be a challenge for you? How would you arrive to your final decision? Essentially, is what I would like to know.
I mean, it all ends in economics, right? As you said before, but let's be honest, 50 cups a day in a restaurant, when you charge your meal like 100 plus euros per person, you can basically calculate that cup of coffee into the menu. So it's quality before economics, speaking in fine dining. But when you go to the cafe, when you do like 500, 600, 700 cups, every cent counts. But yeah, as he said before, the problem is we can afford like expensive coffee, but we cannot afford a person doing those 50 cups a day. It's impossible.
I think it's much easier to say to your head sommelier, go learn about coffee, talk with people, find the roaster that you prefer, then we can try it together and we can find the perfect coffee for the restaurant that we have, you know.
Or you have someone with who you work, who can give you this knowledge and who can help you with developing everything until you are not on the point when you can do it by yourself.
Yeah, of course. Best thing is you can do it by yourself, you know. That's the main idea. But yeah, you need to learn and you need to see on your menu, like Noma probably did, right? If they had vegetable menu, they needed, I don't know, fruitiness or something like that. And that's how we are gonna probably work on it, right? With Peter as well. So.
Thank you. I'm wondering, do any of the three of you have extensively worked with coffee as an ingredient, not as pairing, but as an ingredient for your dish? Because I'm thinking that, so if you use it as an ingredient, you want it to have a specific flavor profile. Maybe you want that bitterness.
Well, I worked with Cascara.
Cascara?
Yeah. So I cold pressed it, and then I dried the leftovers. I blended, and the taste was like sumac.
Okay.
Okay. And I put it in a waffle, and I had it for the cold starter, like for the. I put it beside. Sirloin. Yeah. So I put sirloin and this waffle with cascara. So that's, and I made sorbet out of the water that was left. So that's the only thing I made from coffee in the restaurant in like a year ago. So yeah.
The other two of you?
Yeah, we worked few times with coffee, like coffee with some bone marrow sauce, but we never thought a lot about which coffee should we use. We always use the coffee which we had in the restaurant. Also, because we had a lot of other ingredients, and at the end, we always searched about a little bit of bitterness and maybe a little bit of acidity, and that was all. And maybe also with the desserts, we had 2 or 3 desserts with the coffee, and we never thought a lot about which coffee should we take. We always wanted just to have this bitter taste, and at the end it was not. But now during the years, maybe this is the question: which coffee, for which recipe, and
Perhaps it's more apparent now that there are other flavors that can come through coffee, and that could be presented in a dish in a different kind of way than just looking for that bitterness and acidity. That would be beautiful to see, actually. Tim, I'd like to ask you, were there any specific challenges or breakthroughs during the process of collaborating with these restaurants that stood out to you?
I think what actually caught me by surprise, I can use Noma as an example because it was quite a long process, but what really caught my surprise was how easy it was to train the staff compared to I had so many years of experience training baristas in coffee shops and stuff, but training people in front of house in Noma and also a couple of other restaurants that I worked with very early on was super easy because they understood flavor. They could taste already. They understood the concept of, importance of high quality ingredients. And then also, every restaurant needs different logistics. But how willing they actually were to make it fit, because they really wanted it to work. But it's not like you just give them a machine and off you go. Like, you have to really understand how they work in order to make it easy for them, so that the logistics doesn't take a lot of time and money and extra manpower and so on. And I have to repeat, like, making good coffee is really easy. One of the things that always bothered me, and maybe especially with Noma, because you eat a lot of different dishes, there's a lot of powerful flavors, and at the end of the meal, I never actually wanted coffee myself. Because I'm very much into natural wines, and you have all this kind of beautiful, fruity, delicious flavors, and then you end it with something like a pour over, which was quite thin, to be honest. Light roast, Nordic roast, and wasn't really tasting the way that it did when you drink it in the morning, where your palate is kind of fresh. So that was always bothering me, but we kind of found a solution to that in the last year, where we made just a completely different strength of the drink, and we brewed it in a different way, and that fit the format much, much better. So I think, as a comment for that tradition thing, we kind of broke out of the tradition, because Denmark or even Norway, we don't really have a tradition for espresso, yet everyone expects to get an espresso in a restaurant. We have a tradition for filter coffee, but that might not be a good beverage for the end of the meal. It's a big cup and everything. So we found something in between that actually really, really worked well in the restaurant, and that they are super happy with. So now then, when they go and ask the customer for a coffee, before it would be, would you like espresso or filter coffee? Now they just ask, would you like a cup of coffee? And if they say yes, they bring one type of coffee. And if someone asks for a milk, they actually make a different beverage designed with a different coffee for that particular milk that they're using, that fits the menu. So you just look at it as a cocktail or a glass of wine. You have like a pairing, so to say, but you don't really give the customer an option, because you have thought about what you actually want to serve and how you're going to serve it.
It comes back to what James was saying, to not give them the option, to take control of that. Yeah. James, I have a question for you. If you could make a prediction, where do you see the future of coffee going in terms of its integration in fine dining? Do you see it going anywhere?
I'm just, I had a separate point before, and I'm now trying to work out if I can just shoehorn it.
No,
into
yeah,
this
you
answer.
can. You can. Please.
Well, no, I was thinking about the elephant in the room and the thing we don't really talk about, which is the biggest barrier for me. And I'm old now, got the grey hair. Caffeine is a problem, right? Ultimately, caffeine is a problem, and that's a problem that's really on the coffee industry to solve, and it's not really on restaurants to solve. Decaf is not something we're, as an industry, very proud of. As you walk any coffee festival in the world, no one is being like, try this decaf, right? Like, we don't lead with decaf. And that speaks to how we've treated it for a long time. It's a shame. Like, it's, I think there's a huge opportunity in, we've been proud of coffee's flavor, and yet we're sort of reliant on its psychoactive properties, really, as a sort of sales driver. But if we're truly proud of the flavor, we ought to be investing and pushing the caffeine-free side or the reduced caffeine side of what we're doing, because that really would then open up coffee into restaurants. I just don't want a coffee at 11 at night. I don't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would like to go to bed.
Unless you're in Korea, apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I'm not alone in that, I don't think. Like, I mean, a lot of people who are like, yeah, 3 p.m. is my cutoff. And like, I just don't want, I don't want coffee at like 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And so, but I also feel like caffeine broadly is going to have its moment in the sun fairly soon. I feel like it is the world's most popular psychoactive drug, and no one knows how much they're taking, which is kind of wild if you think about it. And I feel like that's probably due for a little bit of correction culturally, globally. Actually, I think we're probably due to reassess that a little bit. So I think caffeine itself, love it or hate it, is going to be a part of the future of coffee and dining. You know, I think really great decaf should go into all tiramisus, and I will fight you about it, because I've done the blind tastings and it's great. Why would I want? I can have all the flavor if it's done well, and I can have none of the downsides. And yet we never talk about this, and we never bring it up because we're still slightly ashamed of decaf. And I feel like that needs to change.
How about naturally low in caffeine coffee?
Yeah, I'd love to see more of them. The ones I've tested aren't that low in caffeine. So, like, yes, if we can do it, that would be good. I think there's some challenges in the sort of agronomy side of it with removing an insect repellent. But, I mean, I would love to see more effort, more focus, and more pride, frankly, in the kind of lower caffeine end of what we do, just to bring more people into the flavor side of what we do.
Thank you very much. Please, Dale.
I have another thought about the future, but it's less about the future of coffee and fine dining and more the future of coffee. What can we as coffee businesses learn from fine dining? And I'm personally, my prediction for the future is we have a lot to learn, but it's less about the creative cooking element of chefs, but more about learning from restaurants about getting enrollment so that we get to make choices for our customers in a way that makes them happy, charging higher prices, better customer service, actual customer service, rather than serving what we prize as an amazing ingredient and product, but serving it in the way that McDonald's serve food. So I think we've got so much that we can still learn from fine dining, and maybe we should be less worried about selling stuff and wanting to spend more time with the teams in the restaurants to learn how they do it. You know, what magic is there that we can use ourselves.
Thank you very much. It sounds like you guys have a lot to discuss after this. Could I ask about that spoiler about the collaboration with Stowe? Is this a good moment?
Oh yeah, I mean.
Thank you.
I mean, first of all, I need to say, like, I was doing a barista job 15 years ago.
Round of applause, can we?
And I still love it. I still love to do coffee. I still love to do latte art. But you need to know something. Like 15 years ago, nobody knew what latte art is in Slovenia. It was zero. And I'm really happy and joyful that this festival is happening 15 years later in Ljubljana. And we got all the big names and hot shots in the coffee world in Ljubljana. So yeah, thanks guys. And it basically fills me with enthusiasm that we're going in the right directions, also in the restaurants, cafes, etc. So yeah, also I want a big applause for Peter, because he's the leading guy. I mean, all three of us mentioned his name, so it's like he's groundbreaking, and like currently we're doing a Cascara non-alco pairing, and that's just the beginning of it. It takes time, it takes energy, but we're gonna get there. So.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us. I think my time is up. I'd like to give the audience a chance to ask questions. We have 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, please.
I don't care. I will talk about everything. What is hi to everybody? What is most important? Team James and Dale came from the normal world. We are still Balkan. Yeah, we are still Balkan. For example, in Croatia, 80% of restaurants give you capsules, coffee. 20% don't give you anything. When I ask with, with Pellegrini, Boškinec, Boba, why they serve capsules, and what they say to me, they don't have space in bar for machine. They don't want to pay barista because it's 30 to 50 coffees. What they want, just the same coffee, same espresso, quality okay maybe, but quantity is number one. So we are Balkan, still Balkan here. That is the biggest problem. We have one side Bosnia, the other side Italia. Two different habits of drinking coffee. Bosnia, like he said, Turkish coffee. Italia, short espresso after dinner. And what is most important in this area, I talking about Croatia. When we drink coffee, we stop with eating. Our dinner is stop because it's the habit. For example, you told that we can make a blind test, but after third dish, you give me coffee. And I say, what is this? You will say, it's coffee. You won't say it's fucking beer, it's coffee. I just say, okay, my dinner is done, because it's habit. Yeah. That is the biggest problem of this area. Are you agreed?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was that a question or what?
Yeah. Wait. He did say, do you agree?
It was a question mark.
Was a question mark in there.
But what I would say more for these guys than for you, because I think that it can be very true here, and in every culture there is a similar example. The product might be different, so it might be a filter coffee or something else. The way of drinking coffee is different, but the significance might be the same, and many generations build it. But with every habit, and I'm sure you have this with other dishes you serve, there's an opportunity to play. You can tick some of the boxes of the habit. You can serve, a 25 ml light brown foamy beverage in a disgusting cup with a sachet next to it. But it doesn't need to be espresso. It can be a different product. What's in the sachet can be different. And that's that kind of cultural habit that you can riff on and you can play with. Maybe also it's okay to not do it. It could be a better capsule, but just a capsule, or it could be a very traditionally made espresso, maybe made badly with exceptional ingredient that tastes different. And all of those things are different angles that different restaurants or businesses could choose.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very important. Keep an open mind. Keep the options open. I agree with that. Anybody else? Going once?
Maybe this gentleman.
First row.
Hi to everybody. I have a question. Do you think that the problem is also in fine dining that we forgot about the coffee? Because for those who wish to have Michelin stars and so on, the inspectors who taste the food and so on, they don't care about the coffee. The coffee is for them also the end. So they look, how much wine do you have? What's your wine list? If you take local ingredients, if you prepare local food and so on. But when it comes to coffee, it's game over also for them. So also because of that, you don't care about the coffee.
Yeah. I don't know, if I have 40 people at the restaurant, okay? At the end of the day, I think we'll sell 6 espresso, okay? That's it. So I drink more coffee than 40 people, okay? And that's why it's an afterthought, Because like you said, at 11, why would you drink an espresso, you don't want to be awake at 11. You want to go home and sleep and, you know, relax. So that's the, like you said, the decaf stuff or low caffeine. I think there is a possibility that people will maybe drink more of it and understand it, that it's different and it's, yeah, I don't know how to round it up, but still I think that coffee culture needs to grow in Slovenia most of all, because and I think in 15 years we'll be there. Or maybe sooner.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah, but
to answer to your question, yeah,
that the inspectors for the Michelin star, they are not in the culture, so they don't care about.
maybe you're right to some point. I think you're onto something, but it's like if we're going to the Michelin inspectors, we don't know who they are, etc. But if you want a Michelin star, you need to look at all the aspects. It's not just coffee and the food. I mean, you need to take care. Do you have paper towels or normal towels at the toilet? The hygiene, etc., etc. And then it's up to you. It's like you have a score sheet of 100. You want to score that 100, and one of those check boxes, it's also the coffee. So it's not as much to blame the inspectors, because you don't know what they judge. They judge the experience, and that's it. And they're just like ticking boxes, and that's what I think. But yeah.
We never thought about the inspectors. As I said already before, it was always my problem, because I always thought first about the food, then the second about the drinks, and the coffee was always the last thing, because we always sell about 4, 5, 6 coffees at the end of the dinner. And we always leave the time, we said, the coffee will be the last, we have still time, we will do it. And the problem is also was again, do we need the budget? Do we need another, another guy who will take care about the coffee? And that's why the coffee was always the last. But we know that the whole experience is really important, and that's why we really have to think also about the coffee, and that's now maybe the last thing which we are doing now.
Yeah, I just want to throw in 2005, I used to spend a lot of time in a restaurant in the UK called the Fat Duck. It was 2-star, and it at like that few months I was there, it went to 3. And it won Best Restaurant in the World. And I was pushing for good coffee, and the managing director of the restaurant was like, no, the inspector wants crema. The Nespresso capsule gives crema. It's this much room, and anyone could push the button, it goes to the table. We are not messing with the coffee here.
No way.
The Fat Duck now roasts its own coffee, and it has a dedicated baristas inside the program. What changed was not the Michelin inspectors. What changed was the expectations of the guest, driven by the culture around it. And I think that's the big driver. The Fat Duck wasn't keeping up with Michelin. It was keeping up with the guests being like, I'm dropping $1,000, 1,000 here, and you're giving me a capsule?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's the change. That's what drives the real change in these kind of areas. And that's culture around coffee shops, everything, home, the whole thing. So I think change comes, but it comes as a part of culture, not from Michelin, I think.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does the Fat Duck serve the coffee?
I haven't been for ages. When did you? You went before they started roasting. I think they do it at the end, and they do it like it's a menu of things, and it's still pretty traditional.
Yes.
Yeah.
But why, if we can approach the coffee chemistry, why don't we change the schedule? Because the coffee stimulates the metabolism, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing this.
Ooh, I like that question. You wanted to say something, Dale?
Yeah, just as an example, very tied to that question, and very tied to that kind of experience of the Fat Duck as well. I worked with a restaurant for on and off for 12 years, and they're a beautiful small hotel, 12, 15 rooms, and a restaurant service. And the owner, not the chef, but the owner is obsessed with coffee. That's why he started working with us. Wanted great ingredient, wanted whatever. But he was also, business focused and really believed a Michelin star would fix all his problems, right? You know, I have the same issue. I want to win a trophy to fix all my problems. We do irrational things. So he was chasing the star, and at some point in that journey, he came across that feedback. It needs to have crema, it needs to be whatever to score the point. And so he changed roasters, and he went with still a good roaster, a good commercial application, new machine, whatever. Still didn't change anything. Eventually, I don't know what happened. I think he and one of his business partners left, whatever, maybe a midlife crisis, but he gave up on chasing stars in everything in the restaurant, right? So they removed the uniform of the staff. It went from being a very formal place, very French, very traditional. Now they're very casual, they're very relaxed. He went back to doing the things that he was passionate about, letting the chef do what they were passionate about, rebuilt the menu, much more tasting menu side. They still make a lot of money from Sunday dinner and do some very traditional things, but it's all on their terms. And they went back to serving coffee that they wanted to serve. He pulled out the espresso machine because he'd fallen in love with filter coffee, and that restaurant picked up a Michelin star the next year. And now he has two restaurants, both with Michelin stars in the same complex. People come, this enrollment thing, they come for a 3-day experience where they pick things in the garden, they go to a baking course, they go to the cafe on site where the coffee is, high-level espresso done well. The second restaurant has a completely different coffee program, and it's because the chef spent 2 years at Mamo with Tim Wendelbo enjoying great coffee and brought that back in. So as the culture shifts, what they're serving shifts. But as soon as he stopped chasing what he thought an inspector might want, he started delivering what inspectors really wanted, which was an experience and something that changed minds and gave them something new and fresh. So
This actually sounds like a movie plot. You're not describing a movie, are you? Sounds great.
I have a slight point as well to make, because we talk a lot about pleasing the Michelin star evaluators or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's about the customers who come in, giving them a good experience, because they're the ones who pay for it. So if you are giving customers a great experience, they will come back and want more, and I don't think anyone goes to a restaurant to have a cup of coffee. They go to get fed and have a good experience. A cup of coffee can be part of it. It doesn't have to. But if they want to have a cup of coffee, of course it should be delicious. And you can't really... As a guest, I don't really expect to get a cup of coffee made out of coffee that was bought in the supermarket in a fine dining establishment. That for me is absolutely crazy. You don't get served yellowtail wine in a Michelin star restaurant. That's just not the way it is. So for me, that's just a mindset of, at least with the clients that I have that serve coffee, they just think of it as part of their beverage program, and it's nothing pushy at all. It's just if you want coffee, it needs to be delicious, and as simple as that.
Thank you. So I have one more question, last questions for the audience. I'd like to ask everyone here if this panel conversation here gets a Michelin star. Does it get a Michelin star? Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank you guys for being here. Unfortunately it's 6 p.m. Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I don't know if Peter wants to say something. No, he's running away. He's literally running away. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for everybody about.
Okay.
The biggest concern about coffee beans in the restaurants is freshness. So in Balkans we open in Monday. Just they are making that coffee on Friday. They open in Monday and they are doing that coffee on Friday. And when you came to them and say you need to put fresh coffee, no, but I don't want to waste that coffee. This is one of concerns for me.
Freshness.
What will you do for, or do you have some answers about that?
I think he's asking about like the chefs working together, perhaps with the roasters to ensure.
No, I think
That-
what he means is like mostly in our countries you get only packages of 1 kilo of coffee, which is all sealed and everything. And once you open it, it usually goes bad because of the humidity. You open it on Monday. I mean, most of them open it on Monday, and till Friday, it's not perfect. I mean, my answer would be vacuum pack.
Simple.
Nobody does that.
Nobody does.
Not yet. But yeah, you know, that's why we're here. We're talking about this. Change something, perhaps. I don't know if anyone else has a different answer to this as well. And vacuum packing.
Yeah. I mean, you just said freeze it. Yeah, freeze it. Like just freeze it. Like it really works well.
Exactly.
Freezers are good. We have them, lots of them usually in restaurants. So, like, yeah, that would be it. I think it's under leveraged as a tool in a low throughput environment.
Okay. Next year's panel discussion: freezing coffee. Eh? Anyway, and decaf, yes. All right, I'm stepping my foot down. No more questions. That's it. Because I'm saying this because our chefs need to get back to their work. Thank you.